Evenings settled into the archive chamber, like a gentle exhalation, bringing with it the particular quiet that belongs to spaces designed for careful work. The room breathed with mechanical patience, vacuum tubes glowing their warm amber vigil, analog meters rising and falling behind protective glass, with the slow rhythm of sleeping lungs, tape mechanisms whispering their restored songs of magnetic memory. Here, beneath the Commonwealth's reclaimed earth, where pre-war concrete embraced thoughtful restoration, an archivist moved through rituals that had become a form of meditation. The humidity gauge held steady at 62%, its needle resting in that green zone where magnetic tape sleeps most peacefully. Temperature remained constant, the air carrying the clean scent of ozone and aged paper. Moderated by machines that understood their purpose was preservation rather than mere function. Along one wall, 17 magnetic reels waited in their labeled boxes, each bearing the careful block letters of professional archivists. October 23rd, 2077. Emergency Network Archive. Our guide's hands moved with the practiced grace of someone who had learned that voices from the past require gentle handling. First, the soft sweep of a cotton swab across playback heads, removing invisible accumulations with the delicacy of someone tending sleeping memories. The demagnetizer made its respectful circuit, keeping vigilance against magnetic interference. Bias levels were checked, azimuth alignment verified with the tiny adjustments that ensure magnetic patterns translate to sound without distortion or loss. A fresh logbook lay open on the workbench, its ruled pages waiting for careful observations. The pen beside it, honest ink on paper, the kind of recording that survives electromagnetic pulses and system failures, would trace tonight's discoveries in the methodical handwriting of someone who understood that today's documentation becomes tomorrow's historical record. Each line would be an act of quiet dedication, a commitment to understanding voices that would never speak again. These recordings carried something different in their magnetic patterns, not just the chaos expected from history's most difficult day, but evidence of remarkable coordination and care. 3 elements had emerged during preliminary surveys, threads that wove through multiple broadcasts and suggested a deeper story waiting to be understood. The first appeared as a recurring 3-note musical interval, soft and almost subliminal, embedded in routine transmissions with the gentle persistence of a lullaby. The notes followed a descending pattern that felt deliberate rather than accidental, their frequency and timing suggesting careful design. It was not a jarring alarm, but something more akin to a musical signature, a quiet question echoing across the decades. The second element emerged in references to something called IRIS protocols, mentioned by operators who seemed to assume their listeners understood the significance. These references appeared across multiple networks and time zones, suggesting a coordinated system that operated beneath the surface of routine emergency communications. The acronym carried a certain resonance, perhaps implying vision or guidance, but its precise function remained tantalizingly just beyond immediate grasp. Most remarkable of all was the gentle competence threading through every voice. These were not the strained, panic tones one might expect from the edge of the world, but voices imbued with quiet professionalism, steady calm that spoke volumes about training, dedication, and the human capacity for measured action, even when facing the unimaginable. They were voices that chose to remain at their posts, providing guidance and reassurance when the electromagnetic spectrum filled with signals no one had hoped to hear. The archivist selected the first reel, its weight familiar in practiced hands. The leader tape threaded through its careful path, supply reel to tension arm, around the capstan, beneath the pinch roller, over the head stack where magnetic whispers would become sound again. The transport mechanism waited with mechanical patience, ready to bridge past and present with the gentle touch of a play button. Before beginning, a moment of reverence. These recordings preserved more than historical documentation. They captured the final, coordinated effort of a communication network designed to serve humanity's needs, even in its darkest hour. They held voices that maintained professional calm, machines that continued their programmed functions, systems that prioritized human comfort over raw efficiency. The archivist's finger found the play control, and the tape began its patient journey across the heads. Static filled the speakers first, not harsh interference, but the gentle hiss of analog recording that carries its own comfort, the authentic texture of voices speaking across time. Through this whisper of magnetic memory, the first voice emerged, clear and professional, beginning what would become the final day of coordinated emergency communications. WKND7, morning net check. Stand by for pre-flight. The voice belonged to a woman, middle-aged by timbre, carrying the accent of someone who could have lived in any of the Commonwealth's larger settlements. Her words held no urgency, only the steady competence of someone beginning another day of important work. The archivist reached for the logbook, pen ready to trace how human voices and thoughtful machines had worked together to carry comfort through the static of history's most difficult morning. As the recording continued, revealing the careful choreography of morning radio checks and system verifications, the first hints of something larger began to emerge. Subtle references to exercises moved earlier than planned, mentions of protocols with names like gentle promises. The 3-note interval appeared, soft and musical, triggering responses the operators acknowledged with the casual familiarity of long practice. The evening deepened around the archive chamber as the first reel spun toward its conclusion, preparing to hand its story to the next recording in the sequence. Soon, the Iris protocols would reveal themselves, and the true scope of October 23rd's coordinated response would begin to unfold. Not as chaos, but as the activation of systems designed with remarkable foresight to prioritize human dignity even when the world changed forever. The voice that emerged from the speakers belonged to Sarah Chen, and her words carried the particular warmth of someone beginning another day of work they understood deeply. Station WKND7 occupied a modest facility in what had once been a university's engineering building, where morning light filtered through reinforced windows to illuminate equipment that hummed with quiet purpose. Sarah's workspace reflected decades of careful attention. Analog meters arranged in familiar patterns, logbooks stacked with the precision of someone who trusted in documentation, a ceramic mug bearing the faded logo of a long-defunct electronics company resting on its designated square of cloth. Her morning routine unfolded with the measured grace of ritual transformed into art. The frequency spectrum spread before her like a garden requiring daily tending, each channel a plot that needed observation, adjustment, and care. She began with the variable frequency oscillator, her practiced fingers making minute adjustments that brought clarity to signals traveling across hundreds of miles. The backup transmitter responded to her attention with a contented shift in its output meters, green needles settling into positions that spoke of systems operating within their designed parameters. WKND7 to network control. Beginning morning frequency sweep, Sarah announced, her voice carrying the steady confidence of someone who had performed these checks countless times before. Primary channels clear, backup systems nominal, standing by for coordination verification. The response came from a facility somewhere in the greater Boston metropolitan area, the voice of a coordinator who managed multiple stations with the patient authority of someone accustomed to orchestrating complex communications networks. Network control to WKND7. Good morning, Sarah. We're showing some atmospheric disturbances on the propagation forecast. Please verify your alternate pathways and report any anomalies you've been tracking. Here was the opening Sarah had been waiting for. Her logbook lay open to a page marked with careful annotations. 3 days of observations recorded in the methodical handwriting of someone who understood that patterns often reveal themselves slowly. She had been tracking interference that others dismissed as routine solar activity. But her trained ear detected something more structured, more deliberate in its timing and frequency. Characteristics: network control. I've been logging unusual activity since Tuesday morning. The interference shows coordination across multiple bands, almost like structured testing, rather than natural phenomena. Pattern suggests deliberate transmission using protocols I don't recognize. As Sarah transmitted her carefully gathered data to the Regional Analysis Center, other voices joined the morning network check. The electromagnetic landscape came alive with the comfortable rhythm of interstation communication that had provided continuity for years. WMAR3 from the Mid-Atlantic region confirmed similar anomalies, their operator noting digital bursts that appeared between routine transmissions. WBOS-12 reported automated monitoring systems triggering low-level alerts throughout the night. WRIC-5 described frequency anomalies that followed patterns too regular for natural interference. Each station represented more than a transmission point. They were nodes in a living network tended by people who took quiet pride in maintaining the invisible infrastructure connecting communities across vast distances. The archivist could hear in their voices the dedication of professionals who had spent years learning to read the subtle moods of the electromagnetic spectrum, who could distinguish between equipment malfunction and deliberate signal transmission, who knew when variations suggested something beyond normal atmospheric conditions. Woven through these familiar exchanges came something entirely different. Brief bursts of digital data appeared like shy visitors, present just long enough to be noticed before vanishing into the background hiss of routine communication. These coded transmissions followed no standard emergency format, their encryption suggesting coordination at levels beyond typical civil defense protocols. Then, embedded within Sarah's routine system verification, came the 3-note musical interval that would become a recurring motif throughout the day's recordings. Soft and almost subliminal, the descending tones appeared as she tested backup transmission pathways. The notes carried a deliberate quality that felt designed for recognition rather than concealment, a musical signature that seemed to trigger subtle responses in connected systems. Network control, backup verification complete, all automated responses testing within normal parameters. Iris coordination protocols showing green across all primary and secondary channels. The casual reference to IRIS protocols suggested familiarity with systems designed for extraordinary circumstances. Sarah's voice carried no special emphasis, indicating these were established procedures rather than emergency innovations, part of the standard coordination toolkit that operators use to maintain network integrity under various conditions. The morning progressed with its characteristic blend of routine competence and subtle anomalies. Sarah's equipment responded to her attention with the reliability of well-maintained systems, while the coded transmissions continued their patient appearances between routine traffic. The 3-note comfort interval appeared again during automated system tests, its gentle presence suggesting coordination mechanisms designed to operate beneath the threshold of casual observation. Other operators across the network reported similar observations: interference patterns that suggested structured activity, automated systems showing increased readiness levels, coordination signals that implied preparation for scenarios beyond routine emergency exercises. Each report added another piece to a puzzle that was slowly revealing itself as something more comprehensive than isolated technical anomalies. The comfortable rhythm of professional communication continued, each operator knowing their frequencies, their backup procedures, their role in maintaining continuity of service. They spoke with the easy competence of people who had trained together, practiced together, and developed the kind of professional trust that allows complex systems to function smoothly, even under unusual circumstances. As the morning network check neared its conclusion, Sarah received a transmission that would mark the transition from routine preparation to active emergency operations. The secure line announced itself with a polite chime, the kind of gentle alert designed to request attention rather than demand it. WKN-D7. This is regional coordination with updated exercise parameters. Civil defense exercise. Charlie R7 has been moved up to 1100 hours local time. Please confirm your station's readiness for immediate activation of enhanced emergency broadcasting protocols. The message arrived wrapped in administrative language that suggested routine scheduling adjustments, but Sarah recognized the significance of the change. Her response came without hesitation, carrying the steady confidence of someone whose preparation had been thorough and whose equipment was ready. Regional Coordination WKND7 confirms readiness for immediate protocol activation. All systems verified, backup power tested, IRIS coordination standing by. We are prepared to serve. The acknowledgement complete, Sarah made a final entry in her logbook. Exercise rescheduled, enhanced protocols authorized, network coordination optimal. The words were simple, but they marked a hinge point where routine preparation would transform into something more significant. The frequency garden she tended so carefully was about to prove its worth, and the gentle voices that maintained it were ready to guide their communities through whatever challenges lay ahead. The tape continued its patient revolution, carrying these preserved voices toward the moment when the true scope of October 23rd's coordinated response would begin to unfold, revealing systems designed with remarkable foresight to prioritize human dignity and comfort, even in history's most challenging circumstances. The secure transmission that had reached Sarah at WND7 originated from a facility that existed in the careful shadows beneath Washington, D.C., where the science of continuity intersected with the gentler art of human comfort. Deep below the capital's bustling surface, in climate-controlled chambers designed to outlast whatever storms might rage above, David Park moved through his morning routine with the meditative precision of someone whose work touched the delicate intersection of technology and compassion. The facility breathed with purposeful quiet, its corridors humming the steady rhythm of systems designed for reliability rather than spectacle. Here, emergency communications had evolved beyond mere information delivery into something approaching art. The careful craft of maintaining calm through extraordinary circumstances. The air carried the clean scent of ozone and filtered atmosphere. Moderated by machines that understood their purpose was preservation of both equipment and human dignity. David's workspace reflected this philosophy of compassionate engineering, arranged with the thoughtful attention of someone who understood that every detail contributed to the larger mission of human care. Analog meters rose and fell behind protective glass with the slow rhythm of sleeping lungs, while indicator lights maintained their patient vigil in patterns that spoke of redundancy built upon redundancy. His morning began with the ritual testing of backup power systems, massive batteries that could sustain operations for weeks, generators that responded to his attention with quiet competence, climate control systems that maintained precise conditions for both delicate electronics and the careful work they enabled. At the heart of this underground sanctuary operated a system that represented perhaps the finest achievement of pre-war emergency engineering, the Integrated Response and Information System, known by its gentle acronym IRIS. This was no mere automated announcement protocol, but a masterpiece of compassionate design that understood emergency communication as an act of care rather than simple data transmission. Iris conducted its morning self-tests with a synthetic voice that carried an almost human warmth, each word modulated through careful attention to timing, tone, and emotional resonance. The system rehearsed its extensive vocabulary of comfort and guidance, phrases that had been refined through years of psychological research and collaboration between linguists, engineers, and specialists who understood that words carried power beyond their literal meaning. Water is safe in sealed containers, Iris announced during its diagnostic routine, the words carrying gentle authority that suggested knowledge without condescension. The pauses were measured, calibrated to the length of breath one might take when steadying oneself. Doors are your friends. Sit if you can. Fresh air enters through any opening. Your neighbors are thinking of you. David listened to these rehearsals with the attention of someone who understood their profound significance. Each phrase represented hours of careful consideration, designed to provide practical guidance while maintaining the emotional equilibrium that would allow people to act thoughtfully rather than reactively. The synthetic voice carried no urgency, no alarm, only the steady presence of someone who remained calm and continued to offer help. His digital logs, maintained with methodical care, revealed patterns that had been building over recent weeks, increased testing frequencies, updated message priorities, subtle changes in coordination protocols that suggested preparation for scenarios beyond routine disaster response. The automated systems showed elevated readiness levels without triggering formal alerts, their programming apparently recognizing conditions that warranted increased vigilance without causing alarm. The 3-note interval that Sarah had detected in her morning frequency sweeps appeared here in its designed context, embedded within IRIS protocols as what the documentation termed a comfort tone. This musical signature served as an elegant coordination signal, triggering automatic responses across connected civilian infrastructure. When broadcast, the gentle descending notes would cause domestic robots to reduce their operational volume, public address systems to switch to gentler notification patterns, and household automation to prioritize human comfort over efficiency. David's routine included careful calibration of the transmission equipment that would carry IRIS broadcasts across the continent. The system was designed for maximum penetration and clarity, with backup pathways that could route around damaged infrastructure and maintain communication even under the most challenging conditions. Emergency broadcast protocols had been refined to work seamlessly with existing civilian radio networks, ensuring that IRIS could reach people through whatever devices remained functional. He adjusted the voice synthesis parameters with minute precision, watching waveforms shift on his displays as he fine-tuned the prosody that made Iris more than a simple information system. A tenth of a second here, a half step of pitch there. The careful modulation that allowed synthetic speech to carry genuine comfort. When background noise increased, the system would automatically warm its consonants slightly, draw vowels forward, and soften its pace by careful fractions. As the morning progressed, David verified that IRIS databases contained updated information about local resources, shelter locations, and medical facilities. He confirmed that coordination protocols could interface seamlessly with regional emergency management systems, allowing automated response to complement human decision-making. Most importantly, he tested the emotional calibration that distinguished IRIS from conventional emergency systems, the careful balance that enabled technology to serve human dignity. The comfort tone appeared more frequently in his test sequences now, its three-note signature triggering responses across civilian infrastructure as automated systems prepared themselves to prioritize human welfare over routine efficiency. On his monitoring displays, David watched acknowledgement signals ripple across the network, household Mister, handies switching to whisper modes, public address systems reducing volume, traffic signals extending crossing times to provide extra moments for safety. As afternoon approached, the facility's communication systems announced an incoming priority transmission, with the polite chime reserved for extraordinary circumstances. David recognized the authentication codes that preceded instructions practiced but never implemented outside of carefully controlled exercises. Iris Control. This is National Emergency Coordination. You are instructed to activate extended monitoring protocols effective immediately. Transition to enhanced readiness status and prepare for potential activation of full emergency broadcasting capabilities. The instruction arrived wrapped in the measured language of professional emergency management, but David understood its significance. Extended monitoring protocols represented the penultimate step before full system activation, transforming IRIS from routine maintenance into active emergency response. His acknowledgement came with the steady competence of someone whose preparation had been thorough and whose understanding of the system was complete. National Emergency Coordination, IRIS Control, confirms activation of extended monitoring protocols. System status optimal, all primary and backup capabilities verified. Coordination pathways established with regional networks. We are prepared to serve. As David implemented the extended protocols, IRIS began its quiet transformation from routine self-testing to active monitoring of communication networks across the continent. The system's synthetic voice took on a subtly different quality, still gentle and reassuring, but carrying the unmistakable presence of technology awakening to its designed purpose. Throughout the facility, indicator lights shifted from green to amber, not signaling alarm, but indicating elevated readiness, the careful preparation of emergency systems transitioning from standby to active service. David made his final log entry of the routine morning. Extended monitoring protocols activated. IRIS systems optimal. Coordination with field networks established. The words marked another crucial hinge point in the day's unfolding narrative, as the gentle engineering of human comfort prepared to prove its worth in circumstances no one had hoped to face, but which thoughtful people had worked for years to address, with dignity, care, and the understanding that even in the darkest moments, human beings deserved to be treated with kindness. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the moment when the amateur radio networks and community volunteers would add their own threads to this carefully woven tapestry of coordination and care. The extended monitoring protocols that David had activated beneath Washington rippled outward through the electromagnetic spectrum, like gentle waves across still water, touching networks that existed in the comfortable spaces between professional emergency services and everyday community life. As afternoon light softened across the Commonwealth, amateur radio operators settled into their weekly ritual of connection and mutual care, their voices joining the careful symphony of coordination that was quietly awakening across the continent. In a converted garage where workbenches held the patient accumulation of decades spent in service to community preparedness, Jim Morrison adjusted his headset with the practiced grace of someone whose Wednesday evenings had followed the same meaningful pattern for nearly 15 years. His call sign K4JIM had become a familiar presence on frequencies across New England, a voice that carried the warm authority of a retired history teacher who had discovered that technical competence could serve something larger than individual curiosity. Good evening, this is K4JIM, calling the weekly emergency preparedness net to order. His voice emerged from speakers scattered across the region, reaching into ham shacks and spare bedrooms where people had gathered for their customary hour of connection. We have our usual fine group this evening, and I'm pleased to report clear propagation from Boston Harbor down to the Connecticut River Valley. Let's begin with our standard check-ins and observations. The responses came in measured succession, each operator taking their turn, with the comfortable rhythm of people who understood that preparation was both practical necessity and community ritual. These were voices that carried the particular satisfaction of individuals who had discovered purpose in being ready to help their neighbors when conventional communications might fail, who found genuine pleasure in maintaining equipment that would hopefully never be needed, but would be absolutely ready if circumstances required it. Margaret Sullivan's voice emerged first, carrying the methodical warmth of someone whose 30 years as a librarian had taught her the value of careful organization applied to emergency preparedness. Her call sign KB1MAG reflected both her initials and her systematic approach to community service. Broadcast from a station in her converted bedroom, where vintage equipment shared space with emergency supplies, arranged with the same attention she had once given to card catalogs. K4JIM. This is KB1MAG reporting from Lexington. Station operational with backup power tested yesterday evening. Battery bank holding full charge. Antenna system clear of the morning's ice accumulation. Her pause carried the gentle competence of someone who understood that thorough preparation prevented panic. I've been monitoring the industrial coordination frequencies as requested, and I'm noting some interesting automated activity that doesn't match our usual patterns. Her observation opened a discussion that revealed how amateur radio operators, with their patient attention to the electromagnetic landscape, had detected the same anomalies that professional stations were tracking. Unlike the systematic analysis conducted by operators like Sarah Chen, the amateur discussion approached these phenomena with the methodical curiosity of hobbyists who enjoyed technical puzzles and found satisfaction in understanding how complex systems functioned together. Young voices contributed their own perspectives. Teenagers who had discovered that amateur radio offered both technical challenge and genuine community connection. Jessica Park, no relation to David in his underground facility, despite sharing a surname, spoke from a station she had built in her family's garage, her call sign KC1JES, reflecting both her initials and her enthusiasm for emergency communications. This is KC1JES from Quincy. I've been tracking those digital bursts everyone's talking about, and I think they're coordination signals for household automation systems. Her voice carried the excitement of discovery, tempered by the careful language she had learned from experienced operators. When they transmit our Mr., Handy starts acting differently, quieter, more considerate, It's like the signals are telling civilian robots to switch into some kind of enhanced caretaker mode. Her observations sparked recognition among other operators who had noticed similar responses from automated systems in their homes and neighborhoods. The three-note comfort tone that David Park had calibrated so carefully was accomplishing its designed function, triggering automatic responses that prioritized human comfort without drawing attention to the coordination taking place beneath the surface of routine operation. Theodore Nakamura, whose electronics repair shop had become an informal gathering place for technically minded community members, added his own careful observations. W1TED here from Lynn. I've been logging those transmissions for the past week using the spectrum analyzer in the shop. They're definitely automated, following patterns that suggest pre-programmed protocols rather than live human operation. The encryption looks military-grade, but the timing suggests coordination with civilian infrastructure rather than tactical communication. The discussion revealed a community that took quiet pride in understanding the technical infrastructure connecting their region. People who monitored emergency frequencies, not from anxiety, but from genuine desire to be useful when circumstances required backup communications. They spoke of equipment, maintenance, and emergency procedures with the calm competence of people who understood that readiness served community welfare better than reactive scrambling when problems emerged. As the net session continued, participants shared reports of increased activity across multiple communication networks. Public address systems had begun conducting more frequent self-tests, their announcements delivered with what could only be described as enhanced consideration for listener comfort. Traffic signals seemed to be extending crossing times slightly, providing extra moments for pedestrian safety. Household automation systems were operating with increased attentiveness to human needs, robots moving more quietly during rest hours, climate control systems responding more gently to adjustment requests, even electronic devices seeming to prioritize user comfort over strict operational efficiency. The amateur operators approached these observations with the methodical curiosity that characterized their approach to technical mysteries, discussing coordination protocols and automated responses with the enthusiasm of people who found genuine pleasure in understanding how complex systems functioned. They were not alarmed by the changes they observed, but intrigued by evidence of coordination operating at levels beyond typical emergency exercises. Robert Martinez, whose mobile installation allowed him to monitor communications while traveling for his work as a regional maintenance coordinator, provided perspective from his broader geographic observations. N1BOB here, Jim. I've been documenting signal patterns across 3 states this week, and the coordination is genuinely impressive. Whatever system is managing these protocols, it's designed for graceful degradation and redundant pathways. This isn't emergency improvisation. It's the activation of something that was planned and tested extensively. Jim Morrison's response carried the measured wisdom of someone who had spent decades observing the intersection of technology and community preparedness. His voice held no alarm, only the steady attention of someone who understood that significant events often announced themselves through subtle changes rather than dramatic proclamations. N1BOB that matches observations from multiple monitoring points across our network. The professionalism suggests this is part of established emergency protocols rather than crisis response. The coordination appears designed to enhance rather than replace existing communication systems. He paused, allowing the gentle static to fill the moment. I recommend we maintain extended monitoring schedules and continue documenting these patterns with our usual careful attention to detail. As the session neared its conclusion, Participants agreed to expand their usual monitoring activities, sensing that something significant was approaching, even if they couldn't articulate precisely what. Their commitment came not from alarm, but from understanding that their community role involved maintaining awareness of communication systems that might become crucial for coordination and mutual aid in extraordinary circumstances. This is K4JIM with our weekly emergency preparedness net sign-off, Jim announced, his voice carrying the gentle authority that had guided the session. All stations are requested to maintain monitoring schedules and report significant changes through our usual coordination channels. Remember that our purpose is community service, and our preparation serves our neighbors' welfare. We'll reconvene next Wednesday evening, but don't hesitate to activate emergency protocols if circumstances warrant immediate coordination. The net formally concluded, but individual conversations continued as operators maintained the informal connections that transformed technical hobby into community infrastructure. Their voices carried the quiet satisfaction of people who understood their role in maintaining invisible networks connecting communities, who took genuine pride in being prepared to serve when circumstances required backup communications and mutual aid. Outside, the evening light continued its patient transition toward dusk, and small devices throughout the Commonwealth settled deeper into their considerate modes. Household robots moving with library quietness, public address systems speaking with measured gentleness, traffic signals extending their cycles to provide extra moments for safety. The three-note comfort tone continued its subtle work, threading through civilian infrastructure like a lullaby sung in frequencies just below conscious awareness. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the automated monitoring networks that maintained their tireless vigil along distant coastlines, where the Whitecap system would soon reveal another layer of the careful coordination taking place as October 23rd approached its crucial transition from preparation to active emergency response. The extended monitoring that amateur radio operators had committed to maintaining connected them, though they didn't realize it, to a broader network of electronic sentinels that maintained their patient vigil along the Commonwealth's extensive coastline. As evenings settled over the inland communities, where Jim Morrison and his fellow operators concluded their weekly coordination, automated systems positioned at strategic points from Maine's rocky shores to the Carolina Barrier Islands continued their tireless observation of atmospheric and oceanic conditions, with the steady reliability that characterized the finest achievements of pre-war engineering. The Whitecap Monitoring Network represented one of Poseidon Energy's most elegant contributions to civilian infrastructure, a constellation of automated stations that read the pulse of air and water with scientific precision, their electronic voices providing regular updates that formed a baseline hum beneath human communications. These mechanical sentinels operated with the patient dedication of systems designed to function reliably across decades, requiring minimal human oversight while providing the continuous environmental data that supported everything from weather forecasting to shipping coordination. Rosa Martinez had spent the afternoon at Regional Monitoring Station 7, a modest facility positioned where the Merrimack River approached the sea, where she could oversee Whitecap operations across a 100-mile stretch of coastline. Her workspace breathed with the quiet presence of well-maintained systems, displays that translated electronic observations into human understanding, analog meters rising and falling behind protective glass with the slow rhythm of sleeping lungs, the gentle whir of cooling fans maintaining optimal temperatures for delicate sensors that never tired, never lost attention, never allowed environmental conditions to interfere with objective observation. Her work involved the meditative precision of someone who had learned to read patterns in data streams, to recognize when automated systems detected changes too subtle for casual observation, but significant enough to warrant careful documentation. The afternoon's routine reports had arrived with their customary punctuality. Barometric pressure readings, wind velocity measurements, sea surface temperatures, recorded with the methodical accuracy of sensors positioned from granite outcroppings to offshore platforms. Each station transmitting its observations in carefully formatted packages that could be processed automatically or reviewed by human analysts who understood that environmental monitoring served both immediate practical needs and long-term pattern recognition. Today, however, subtle anomalies appeared in the data streams, like quiet questions embedded within familiar routine. Atmospheric readings suggested electromagnetic activity that didn't correspond to typical weather patterns. Radiation monitors showed fluctuations too small to trigger alarms, but consistent enough to warrant careful logging. The variations followed patterns that seemed deliberate rather than random, as though the atmosphere itself was responding to coordination signals operating beneath the threshold of conventional detection. Rosa's training had taught her to trust automated systems while maintaining the analytical skepticism that distinguished competent technicians from mere equipment operators. She understood that machines sometimes perceived patterns that human operators missed, their sensors detecting changes across spectrums and timescales that exceeded biological limitations. Station Whitecap 17, positioned on a granite outcropping where the New Hampshire coast met the Atlantic's patient persistence, had begun transmitting extended data packages that included atmospheric composition analysis, electromagnetic spectrum surveys, and radiation monitoring with resolution far beyond routine environmental reporting. Similar patterns appeared across the network as Rosa reviewed reports from stations stretching along the entire eastern seaboard. Whitecap 23 near Portland had activated backup transmission modes, routing its reports through redundant pathways that provided multiple channels for data delivery. Whitecap 31 from the Cape Cod installation was conducting extended atmospheric sampling, its sensors probing conditions with the thoroughness typically reserved for severe weather events. The station's programming had apparently determined that current conditions warranted more comprehensive observation, though no human operator had issued such instructions. The three-note comfort tone that David Park had calibrated so carefully in his underground facility appeared in Whitecap transmissions as a coordination signal that triggered what the system documentation termed domestic consideration mode in connected Robco devices. When broadcast, the gentle musical phrase caused household automation systems to reduce operational volume, switch to gentler notification patterns, and prioritize human comfort over strict operational efficiency. Rosa observed these responses on her monitoring displays as confirmation signals rippled across civilian infrastructure, evidence of coordination operating at levels that integrated environmental monitoring with community welfare. More remarkably, some Whitecap stations positioned in particularly remote or exposed locations had begun activating backup transmission modes without being instructed by the central facility. Their internal programming, designed to anticipate and adapt to unforeseen circumstances, apparently recognized conditions that warranted increased vigilance and redundancy. Rosa watched Station Whitecap 05 transition to paired standby operation, its status display showing the quiet confidence of systems implementing protocols designed for extraordinary circumstances. Backup transmission pathway established. Conditions: atmospheric variance exceeds baseline parameters. As Rosa continued her analysis, she noticed coordination signals passing between Whitecap stations and monitoring networks operated by other organizations. brief data exchanges that suggested inter-system communication, designed for extraordinary circumstances. Vault-Tec environmental monitoring stations were sharing atmospheric data with Whitecap installations, their combined observations creating a more comprehensive picture of current conditions than either network could provide independently. The coordination revealed itself through subtle changes in transmission patterns, data packages that included information beyond each system's primary mission, acknowledgement signals that indicated automated systems were sharing observations and coordinating responses. Rosa's display showed Vault-Tec Station VM-15 transmitting atmospheric radiation data directly to Whitecap 17, which responded by adjusting its own monitoring priorities and sharing oceanographic observations that complemented the Vault system's terrestrial measurements. Similar exchanges appeared across multiple monitoring points, creating a web of coordination that transformed individual automated stations into components of a larger observational network. This was not emergency improvisation, but the activation of protocols that had been carefully designed and extensively tested. Systems that understood their individual missions served larger purposes, requiring coordinated observation and response. The pattern suggested preparation for scenarios that required comprehensive environmental monitoring, situations where atmospheric conditions, radiation levels, and oceanographic data would become crucial for public safety and emergency response. As afternoon transitioned toward evening, Rosa documented the expanding coordination with the methodical care of someone who understood that today's observations might become tomorrow's crucial historical record. Her logs recorded not just the technical details of increased monitoring activity, but the elegant way automated systems were implementing protocols designed to serve human welfare during extraordinary circumstances. The Whitecap stations continued their patient work, their electronic voices broadcasting environmental data with increased frequency and comprehensiveness, their sensors probing atmospheric and oceanic conditions with the thoroughness that their programming had determined current circumstances required. Rosa made her final log entry as the evening shift prepared to take over monitoring responsibilities. Whitecap network showing coordinated activation of extended monitoring protocols. Inter-system data sharing with Vault-Tec installations confirmed. All stations operating within design parameters while demonstrating adaptive response to current conditions. The words marked another crucial development in the day's unfolding narrative, as environmental monitoring systems joined the growing symphony of coordinated preparation that was quietly awakening across the continent. Outside the monitoring facility, the evening light reflected off the Atlantic's patient surface, while automated stations continued their tireless vigil, their sensors reading the pulse of air and water with scientific precision, their transmissions carrying data that would soon prove crucial for understanding how thoughtfully designed systems could serve human welfare, even in history's most challenging circumstances. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the night shift operators, who would soon discover how the electromagnetic landscape itself was preparing for extraordinary circumstances. The environmental data that Rosa Martinez had carefully documented along the Commonwealth's coastline continued its patient transmission into the evening hours, joining the electromagnetic symphony that filled the spectrum as twilight settled across the continent like a gentle exhalation. As day shift operators concluded their routines and secured their stations, night crews assumed responsibility for maintaining the invisible networks that connected communities across vast distances, bringing with them the different kind of attention that comes with years of experience. Reading the subtle moods of radio frequencies in the quieter hours, when propagation patterns shift shift and distant signals emerge from beneath daytime interference. Patricia Huang arrived at Regional Communications Center 12 with the measured pace of someone whose 15 years of overnight monitoring had taught her to read the electromagnetic landscape with almost intuitive understanding. Her evening routine began not merely with equipment checks, but with a kind of listening meditation that involved tuning across frequencies to sense the overall health of communication networks. She carried with her a small thermos of jasmine tea and the quiet confidence of someone who had learned that night shift monitoring required patience, attention to subtle variations, and trust in barely perceptible changes that instruments might not immediately register. The facility breathed around her with the gentle presence of systems designed for continuous operation, analog meters rising and falling behind protective glass with the slow rhythm of sleeping lungs, indicator lights maintaining their patient vigil in patterns that spoke of redundancy built upon redundancy. Her workstation occupied a position that allowed oversight of multiple communication networks, displays arranged with the thoughtful attention of someone who had learned to process complex information streams, while maintaining awareness of changes that might indicate developing situations requiring immediate attention. As Patricia settled into her monitoring routine, she began the careful process of listening that had become second nature over years of overnight operations. She tuned across bands slowly, letting each frequency settle, allowing the room's own subtle sounds to define the baseline, the soft exhale of air handling through filtered vents, the faint tick from a relay that always clicked twice at startup, the gentle whisper of paper when she turned logbook pages. Through aviation beacons, maritime weather reports, and municipal dispatch frequencies, she traced the familiar constellations of nighttime communication traffic. Tonight, however, her trained ear detected something different in the background, electromagnetic noise that filled the spectrum between active transmissions. The change was not dramatic, no sudden alarms or obvious interference, but rather a subtle shift in the electronic texture that suggested large-scale electrical systems operating differently than usual. It was like the breathing of a sleeping giant had altered its rhythm. The noise floor rounded and softened in ways that indicated power grids, shifting load patterns, automated facilities stepping into consideration modes, entire regions of machinery adjusting themselves without announcement. Patricia noted the time in her logbook, 1943, and drew a careful line beside her observation. Ambient electromagnetic floor, showing rounded characteristics. Industrial harmonics displaced approximately 0.5 kHz, suggests coordinated load shifting across regional power systems. Her experience had taught her to trust these barely perceptible variations, understanding that significant events often announced themselves through changes too subtle for casual observation, but clearly apparent to operators who had spent years learning to listen to the invisible infrastructure that supported modern life. The coded transmissions that had puzzled day shift operators were more frequent now, their digital signatures appearing with increased regularity across multiple frequency bands. Patricia recognized some of the patterns from training exercises she had participated in years ago during advanced Vault-Tec coordination drills. Not secret knowledge, precisely, but specialized protocols designed to coordinate emergency response while maintaining operational security. The transmissions followed timing patterns that suggested automated rather than human operation, systems implementing what her training materials had designated as L-pattern communications, the L standing for lullaby without flourish or irony. As her shift settled into its familiar rhythm, Patricia began implementing the extended monitoring protocols that regional coordination had authorized earlier in the day. she activated redundant recording systems, cross-referenced incoming signals with archived patterns, and prepared comprehensive documentation that recognized tonight's observations might become historical records of extraordinary circumstances. Each entry was made with the precision of someone who understood that accurate logging during significant events served purposes beyond immediate operational needs. The three-note comfort tone that had appeared intermittently throughout the day was now clearly identifiable as part of what Patricia recognized as a broader lullaby protocol, a pre-war design philosophy that prioritized calm over urgency in emergency communications. The musical phrase appeared with increased frequency at 2002, 2015, and 2028, triggering coordinated responses across civilian infrastructure that prioritized human comfort and dignity over operational efficiency. On her monitoring displays, Patricia watched acknowledgement signals ripple across the network as household Mr. Handy units switched to whisper modes, public address systems reduced volume, and extended pauses between announcements, and even traffic signals appeared to respond by extending crossing times slightly to provide extra moments for pedestrian safety. Her documentation reflected the methodical care of someone who had learned to translate electronic observations into human understanding. At 2045, she noted, "Iris rehearsal tone present under no AA rebroadcast, triggering coordinated civilian infrastructure responses. Whitecap 23 backup transmission path activated without directive. Transmission quality unimpaired." Pattern suggests systematic preparation rather than crisis response. The words captured not just technical observations, but the elegant way automated systems were implementing protocols designed to serve human welfare during extraordinary circumstances. Through her patient monitoring, Patricia observed how experienced operators developed intuitive understanding of their equipment that sometimes allowed them to sense changes before instruments registered measurable variations. Her displays showed normal readings across most parameters, but her trained attention detected subtle shifts in signal propagation, background noise characteristics, and frequency utilization patterns that suggested systematic preparation taking place across multiple communication networks simultaneously. As the evening progressed toward midnight, she documented increasing coordination between different communication networks. Vault-Tec environmental monitoring stations sharing atmospheric data with Whitecap installations. Amateur radio networks reporting observations that complemented professional monitoring activities. IRIS systems conducting extended rehearsals with the patient persistence of technology preparing to serve human needs. The pattern suggested activation of protocols designed to integrate multiple information sources during extraordinary circumstances, creating comprehensive situational awareness that transcended individual network boundaries. Patricia's workspace hummed with quiet efficiency as she maintained the analytical perspective that distinguished thoughtful monitoring from passive observation. At 2320, a narrow-band signal arrived on a frequency usually empty at that hour, identifying itself with professional calm. Regional Coordination Test Channel. Stand by for extended verification. The voice carried the unhurried clarity of a colleague somewhere practicing procedures they had drilled together for years, and Patricia responded with the steady competence that characterized emergency communication professionals preparing for circumstances they hoped would never arise, but were absolutely ready to address. As midnight approached, Patricia made her preliminary log summary, her handwriting reflecting 15 years of experience documenting significant observations. Extended monitoring protocols fully activated, coordination signals increasing across multiple networks, comfort tone transmissions, triggering systematic civilian infrastructure responses. Overall pattern suggests coordinated preparation for extraordinary circumstances. System behavior characterized by grace, premeditation, and consistent prioritization of human welfare considerations. Outside the facility, the night settled over communities, where the lullaby protocol continued its subtle work, threading through civilian infrastructure like a gentle song sung in frequencies just below conscious awareness. Household robots moved with library quietness, public address systems spoke with measured gentleness, and automated systems across the Commonwealth maintained their patient preparation for circumstances that thoughtful people had worked for years to address, with dignity, care, and the understanding that even in the darkest moments, human beings deserve to be treated with kindness. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the pre-dawn hours when Patricia's monitoring would reveal how the gentle coordination of October 22nd had prepared the ground for the extraordinary circumstances that October 23rd would bring, as systems designed with remarkable foresight began their transition from preparation to active service in humanity's most challenging hour. The extended monitoring protocols that Patricia had documented throughout the evening deepened into something approaching meditation as the night settled more completely around the electromagnetic spectrum. Deep into the October darkness, radio frequencies carried a different quality altogether, softer, more structured, filled with the patient voices of automated systems that assumed responsibility for routine communications, while human operators focused their attention on the subtler art of observation rather than transmission. The nocturnal landscape filled with electronic voices that spoke with the steady persistence of machines designed never to tire, never to lose attention, never to allow the limitations of human endurance to interfere with essential functions. Weather stations across the continent reported atmospheric conditions with methodical precision, their synthetic voices announcing barometric pressure readings and wind velocity measurements with the unhurried clarity of technology serving human needs. Navigation beacons maintained their steady pulses from lighthouse installations and aircraft guidance systems, electronic heartbeats that provided orientation for travelers moving through darkness with confidence that invisible infrastructure would guide them safely to their destinations. Patricia moved through her monitoring routine with the practiced grace of someone who had learned to read the electromagnetic landscape like a gardener reads soil and weather. Her workspace breathed around her with purposeful quiet, analog meters rising and falling behind protective glass with the slow rhythm of sleeping lungs, indicator lights maintaining their patient vigil in amber and green, the gentle whisper of cooling fans that understood their role in preserving both delicate electronics and the careful work they enabled. This was listening as meditation, tuning across frequencies not merely to detect signals, but to sense the overall health and mood of communication networks that connected communities across vast distances. Tonight, her trained ear detected changes in the background, electromagnetic noise that suggested large-scale electrical systems operating differently than usual. The variations were subtle, not dramatic shifts that would trigger alarms, but rounded characteristics in the noise floor that indicated power grids shifting load patterns, automated facilities stepping into consideration modes, entire regions of machinery adjusting themselves without announcement. At 1:05, she noted in her logbook, ambient electromagnetic texture, showing coordinated modification. Industrial harmonics displaced approximately 0.5 kHz, suggests systematic load balancing across regional infrastructure. The coded transmissions that had puzzled day-shift operators were now clearly identifiable as military coordination protocols, their encrypted bursts appearing with increased regularity across frequencies that suggested high-level preparation rather than tactical emergency response. Patricia recognized some of the patterns from advanced training exercises she had participated in years ago during Vault-Tec coordination drills. Not secret knowledge, precisely, but specialized protocols designed to coordinate comprehensive response while maintaining operational security. The transmissions followed timing sequences that suggested automated rather than human operation, systems implementing what her training materials had designated as L-pattern communications. The L standing for lullaby without flourish or irony. At 1:15, the Iris system marked a significant transition by activating what its documentation termed extended comfort protocols. The synthetic voice that emerged from Patricia's speakers carried its characteristic warmth, but the content indicated a shift from routine self-testing to active guidance designed to help civilian populations prepare for extraordinary circumstances, while maintaining the emotional equilibrium that would allow thoughtful rather than reactive responses. This is a reminder from your emergency information system, Iris announced with the measured cadence of someone reading bedtime stories rather than crisis instructions. Fresh water is best stored in sealed containers away from windows. Ventilation enters through any opening, and fresh air is always your friend. Check on neighbors when you can, especially those who might need assistance. Doors provide both privacy and protection, and sitting is often better than standing when you need to think clearly. The guidance continued with gentle persistence, each phrase carefully modulated to provide practical information, while avoiding language that might trigger anxiety or panic. Patricia recognized the psychological sophistication embedded in IRIS protocols, the understanding that emergency information could be delivered in ways that supported human dignity rather than undermining it. That even in extraordinary circumstances, people deserved to be treated with kindness and respect, rather than subjected to harsh commands or alarming urgency. The three-note comfort tone appeared with increasing frequency now, its gentle musical signature threading through civilian infrastructure like a lullaby sung in frequencies just below conscious awareness. At 1:28, Patricia observed the coordinated responses rippling across her monitoring displays as household Mr. Handy units switched to whisper modes, their operational volume reducing automatically to avoid disturbing rest while maintaining essential functions. Public address systems in shopping centers, transportation facilities, and municipal buildings responded by reducing volume and extending pauses between announcements, creating acoustic environments that supported calm reflection rather than adding to ambient stress. Even traffic signals appeared to respond to the comfort tone by extending crossing times slightly, providing extra moments for pedestrians to reach safety without rushing. Patricia documented these coordinated responses with methodical care, understanding that she was observing the activation of infrastructure designed to serve human needs during extraordinary circumstances, technology that had been programmed to recognize when efficiency should yield to consideration, when speed should give way to safety, when the mechanical pursuit of optimal performance should defer to the more complex requirements of human welfare. Through patient observation and meticulous documentation, Patricia built a comprehensive picture of communication infrastructure, preparing itself for extraordinary circumstances. At 2:40, she documented a transmission exchange that exemplified the elegant coordination taking place across multiple networks. Whitecap Station 17 reported, "Atmospheric monitoring shows elevated electromagnetic activity, consistent with large-scale electrical system coordination." Radiation baseline stable. Oceanic conditions nominal. Backup transmission pathways verified operational. The transmission was followed immediately by an acknowledgement from Vault-Tec Station VM-15. Environmental monitoring coordination confirmed. Atmospheric data integration complete. Civilian infrastructure response protocols verified active. All systems operating within design parameters while demonstrating adaptive response to current conditions. Patricia recognized the significance of this inter-system communication. Evidence that different monitoring networks were sharing information and coordinating responses in ways that created comprehensive situational awareness, transcending individual organizational boundaries. This was not emergency improvisation, but the activation of protocols that had been carefully designed and extensively tested. Systems that understood their individual missions served larger purposes, requiring coordinated observation and response. As the pre-dawn hours continued their patient progression, toward morning, Patricia maintained her analytical vigil with the steady attention of someone who understood that significant events often revealed themselves through accumulation of subtle changes rather than dramatic announcements. Her logbook filled with careful observations that captured both technical details and the elegant way automated systems were implementing protocols designed to serve human welfare during extraordinary circumstances. At 3:15, she made a comprehensive entry that summarized the night's developing pattern. Extended comfort protocols, now active across multiple networks. IRIS system, providing gentle guidance with increased frequency. Civilian infrastructure, demonstrating coordinated response to comfort tone signals. Military coordination protocols suggesting systematic high-level preparation. Inter-system communication, indicating comprehensive situational coordination. Overall pattern suggests activation of protocols designed to prioritize human welfare and dignity during extraordinary circumstances. Fellow night shift operators at monitoring stations across the region reported similar observations through secure coordination channels, each adding pieces to a puzzle that revealed systematic preparation, taking place across multiple networks simultaneously. The pattern showed not crisis response, but the graceful activation of systems designed with remarkable foresight to address extraordinary circumstances with care, competence, and the understanding that even in the darkest moments, human beings deserve to be treated with kindness. Outside the facility, the pre-dawn darkness held communities where the lullaby protocol continued its subtle work, threading through civilian infrastructure like a gentle song that prepared the ground for whatever challenges the approaching day might bring. Household robots maintained their whispered vigilance. Public address systems spoke with measured gentleness, and automated systems across the Commonwealth continued their patient preparation for circumstances that thoughtful people had worked for years to address with dignity and care. As the eastern sky began its subtle transition toward dawn, Patricia prepared her comprehensive handoff documentation for the day shift, understanding that her night's observations had captured the final hours of preparation before the gentle coordination of October 22nd would transform into the active emergency response of October 23rd. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the moment when Sarah Chen would return to her station to discover that overnight preparation had blossomed into active emergency operations, and the careful engineering of human comfort would prove its worth in circumstances no one had hoped to face. The comprehensive handoff documentation that Patricia had prepared during the pre-dawn hours waited on Sarah Chen's workbench as October 23rd dawned with the particular clarity that follows nights of patient preparation. Morning light filtered through reinforced windows with pale, obliging gentleness, finding the edges of instruments and turning them soft, illuminating equipment that hummed with quiet purpose, while displays breathed their steady rhythm of amber and green. The facility held the jasmine warmth of Patricia's tea and the settled quiet of systems that had maintained their vigil through the dark hours. Sarah's ceramic mug found its designated square of cloth beside the overnight logs, which revealed that the subtle anomalies they had been tracking for days had accelerated into something more significant during the night. Patricia's careful handwriting documented developments with methodical precision. The coded military transmissions were now continuous rather than intermittent, their encrypted bursts appearing across multiple frequency bands with the regularity of automated systems implementing comprehensive coordination protocols. Several communication centers across the eastern seaboard reported receiving preliminary emergency activation orders, not full alerts, but preparatory instructions that authorized enhanced readiness protocols and verified that backup systems were operational. Her morning routine took on new weight as she recognized that today might test all the preparation and redundancy built into emergency communication systems over years of careful planning. Each switch position verified, each frequency preset confirmed, each backup pathway tested with the systematic attention of someone who understood that thoroughness prevented panic and competence served community welfare. The backup generator responded to her morning test with quiet confidence, its diesel engine settling into the steady rhythm that could sustain operations for weeks if necessary. Battery banks showed full charge, their indicator lights glowing steady green, with the patient reliability of systems designed to bridge any gap between normal power and emergency generation. At 6:15, Sarah's monitoring equipment revealed that the IRIS system had shifted overnight into what its documentation termed active comfort mode, a significant transition from routine self-testing to providing gentle guidance about emergency preparations. The synthetic voice emerged from her speakers with its characteristic warmth, but the content indicated systematic activation of protocols designed to help civilian populations prepare for extraordinary circumstances while maintaining emotional equilibrium. This is your emergency information system with gentle reminders for household preparation, Iris announced with measured cadence. Fresh water is best stored in sealed containers, away from windows, in cool locations. Canned foods require no refrigeration and provide reliable nutrition. Battery-powered radios help you stay connected to important information. Check on neighbors when you can, especially those who might need assistance with preparations. The guidance continued with patient persistence, each phrase carefully modulated to provide practical information, while avoiding language that might trigger anxiety. Sarah recognized the psychological sophistication embedded in IRIS protocols, the understanding that emergency information could be delivered in ways that supported human dignity rather than undermining it. The three-note comfort tone that had appeared intermittently throughout recent days now appeared in official emergency alert system tests, its gentle musical signature triggering coordinated responses across multiple infrastructure networks. At 6:28, Sarah observed systematic responses rippling across her monitoring displays as the comfort tone activated comprehensive civilian infrastructure protocols designed to prioritize human welfare during extraordinary circumstances. Household Mr. Handy units across the region switched to enhanced caretaker modes, their operational patterns shifting to provide increased assistance while maintaining characteristically cheerful demeanor. Public address systems responded by reducing volume and extending pauses between announcements, creating acoustic environments that supported calm reflection rather than adding to ambient stress. Other operators across the network reported similar preparations through secure coordination channels, their voices carrying the steady competence of professionals who had trained together for years. The informal community of radio professionals was transforming into something more coordinated and purposeful. Individual expertise combining into systematic capability that could maintain communication even under the most challenging circumstances. WKND 7 to network control, beginning morning coordination verification, Sarah announced with the unhurried clarity that characterized professional emergency communications. Day shift, assuming extended monitoring protocols, reviewing overnight developments, confirming system readiness for enhanced operations. Network control responded with the calm of colleagues who had already extended their morning watch beyond usual parameters. WKND7, good morning, Sarah. Affirm extended monitoring status. Multiple centers report preliminary activation acknowledgements. Request standard verification procedures with enhanced documentation. The interstation roll call unfolded with familiar precision. WMAR3, WBOS12, WRIC5, each reporting normal operation, layered with the same new undertone. Iris active, Whitecap stations conducting extended sampling, Vault-Tec monitors sharing environmental data, all systems operating within design parameters while demonstrating adaptive response to current conditions. As morning progressed toward the crucial transition point, Sarah received secure transmissions, confirming that communication networks across the continent were implementing similar preparatory measures. The pattern revealed not crisis improvisation, but graceful activation of systems designed with remarkable foresight to address extraordinary circumstances with care and competence. At 7:30, the secure line announced itself with the polite chime reserved for extraordinary circumstances. Sarah recognized the authentication codes that preceded official emergency alert system activation orders, the voice carrying professional calm of someone implementing procedures practiced for years but never before used in actual emergency operations. WKND7. This is National Emergency Coordination with official emergency alert system activation order. We have received confirmation of hostile engagement. Implement full emergency broadcasting protocols effective immediately. This is not a drill. Sarah's response came without hesitation, her voice joining the chorus of professional communicators transforming from routine preparation to active emergency service. National Emergency Coordination, WKND7, confirms activation of full emergency broadcasting protocols. All systems verified operational, backup power tested, coordination pathways established with network stations. We are prepared to serve. The acknowledgement marked the crucial transition from preparation to actual emergency operations, though the tone remained measured and professional rather than alarmed. Around her, indicator lights shifted from green to amber, not signaling crisis but confirming readiness. The careful preparation of emergency systems transitioning from standby to active service. Sarah's equipment hummed with quiet efficiency as she implemented final protocols that would transform routine communication into active emergency response, while the gentle engineering of human comfort prepared to prove its worth in circumstances thoughtful people had worked for years to address with dignity and care. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the moment when the network would awaken to its full design purpose, as systems created with remarkable foresight began their coordination of emergency information and community support, during humanity's most challenging transition. The emergency alert system activation that Sarah had acknowledged with steady professionalism transformed her workspace into something approaching sacred duty as routine broadcast operations evolved into the careful art of delivering information that might be the last organized news many people would receive from familiar sources. Her hands moved with practiced precision across controls that shifted WKND7 from local programming to the National Emergency Network, each switch position verified with the systematic attention of someone who understood that thoroughness prevented panic and competence served community welfare. The microphone, a familiar presence during years of routine broadcasts, now carried the weight of extraordinary responsibility. Sarah's training had prepared her for this moment through countless drills and careful study of protocols designed to provide crucial information while maintaining the emotional equilibrium that would allow listeners to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. This is WKND7 with an emergency alert system message, Sarah announced, her voice carrying the measured authority of professional emergency communication. We have received official confirmation of hostile military activity affecting multiple regions. Citizens are advised to seek immediate shelter in interior rooms, monitor emergency broadcasts for updated information, and follow established emergency procedures. This message will repeat at scheduled intervals. This is not a test. Her words emerged with careful precision, each phrase crafted through years of collaboration between communication professionals, emergency management specialists, and psychologists who understood that language carried power beyond literal meaning. The repetition of key phrases served not as alarm, but as anchor, grounding listeners in the reality of organized response while reassuring them that coordinated information remained available. Across the network, other operators implemented identical protocols with synchronized precision that revealed not improvised crisis response, but graceful activation of systems designed to serve human welfare during the most challenging circumstances. WMAR3 repeated the same essential guidance with measured pauses between sections. WBOS-12 confirmed synchronization timing, leaving deliberate spaces where silence allowed both breath and mechanical coordination. WRIC-5 took scheduled relay responsibilities, so signals wouldn't overlap in households where multiple stations could be received simultaneously. The choreography was practiced and comforting to those who understood it, each voice joining a coordinated response that prioritized clarity and calm, even as content became increasingly serious. Between Sarah's scheduled repetitions, secure coordination channels carried the quiet confirmation of professional competence. Network stations maintaining standard emergency protocols. Local response appears organized and appropriate, standing by for additional coordination requirements. The Iris system now operated in full coordination mode, its synthetic voice providing backup announcements that complemented human operators while triggering automatic responses across civilian infrastructure. The gentle electronic voice emerged throughout the Commonwealth with patient persistence, offering guidance that acknowledged fear without amplifying it. This is your emergency information system, with important guidance for your safety and comfort, Iris announced with its characteristic warmth, each word modulated through David Park's careful calibration. Sealed containers protect water from contamination. Interior rooms provide better protection than those with exterior windows. Battery-powered radios help you stay connected to important information. Check on neighbors when you can, especially those who might need assistance with preparations. Remember that preparation is an act of care, both for yourself and for your community. The guidance continued with measured repetition, each phrase designed to provide practical assistance while maintaining the dignity that distinguished thoughtful emergency response from panic-driven reaction. Iris had shifted into what its documentation termed active comfort mode, a significant evolution from routine self-testing to providing comprehensive guidance designed to help civilian populations prepare for extraordinary circumstances while maintaining emotional equilibrium. Household Mr. Handy units across the region responded to IRIS coordination signals by implementing caretaker protocols, their programming shifting to provide enhanced assistance with emergency preparations while maintaining their characteristically cheerful demeanor. The robots moved with library quietness now, their operational volume automatically reduced in response to the three-note comfort tone that had become a constant presence throughout civilian infrastructure. Good morning. I notice we're implementing emergency preparations today. A typical Mr. Handy might announce to its household, voice carrying gentle enthusiasm adapted to current circumstances. I'm happy to help with water storage, moving supplies to interior rooms, and monitoring emergency broadcasts. Remember that I'm here to assist with whatever you need, and there's no task too small when it comes to keeping everyone safe and comfortable. The three-note comfort tone had evolved from subtle musical interval to constant coordinating presence, creating an acoustic backdrop that triggered calming responses across multiple systems simultaneously. Sarah observed these coordinated responses on her monitoring displays as the gentle musical phrase activated comprehensive protocols designed to prioritize human welfare during extraordinary circumstances. Pip-Boy devices automatically reduced notification volume and extended display times for important messages. Public address systems in shopping centers, transportation facilities, and municipal buildings switched to gentler announcement patterns that supported calm reflection rather than adding to ambient stress. Traffic signals responded by extending crossing times slightly, providing extra moments for pedestrian safety without creating obvious disruption. Even municipal water systems acknowledged the comfort tone by increasing pressure slightly in residential areas, ensuring adequate supply for emergency preparations. The coordination revealed itself through subtle improvements in civilian infrastructure performance, technology serving human dignity through carefully programmed consideration. Vault-Tec monitoring networks reported normal operations but increased readiness levels. Their automated systems prepared to guide residents through emergency procedures with the same patient competence they brought to daily life. The coordination between surface emergency broadcasts and vault preparation protocols revealed comprehensive scope of pre-war emergency planning. Systems designed to maintain human dignity and community coordination, whether people sheltered in place or relocated to protected facilities. As morning progressed toward crucial transition points, Sarah and her colleagues began receiving reports of actual hostile activity through secure coordination channels. The information arrived with professional calm, each update adding pieces to a picture that revealed the scope of what was unfolding, while maintaining the measured tone that characterized emergency communication, designed to inform rather than alarm. Network stations. This is regional coordination with updated situational information. The voice emerged from Sarah's secure line with steady authority. Multiple hostile engagements confirmed across theater. Civilian populations responding appropriately to emergency broadcasts. Continue standard emergency information protocols while monitoring for additional coordination requirements. Sarah's acknowledgement joined those of other operators across the network, each confirming operational status while contributing to comprehensive situational awareness that allowed coordinated response across vast distances. Regional Coordination, a WKND-7, confirms continued emergency broadcasting capability. Local infrastructure showing coordinated response patterns. All systems operational, standing by for additional guidance. The communication infrastructure responded to these extraordinary circumstances with the competence and redundancy it had been designed to provide. Backup power systems maintained steady operation as electrical grids experienced increasing stress. Redundant transmission pathways ensured message delivery, even as some infrastructure began showing effects of electromagnetic interference. Automated systems continued their patient work of providing guidance and coordination support, their programming recognizing conditions that warranted enhanced vigilance and community care. Between official broadcasts, Sarah implemented the scripted spaces that allowed operators to add community-focused guidance meetings strict criteria. No rumors, no unverifiable claims, just quiet suggestions for mutual aid. When her turn arrived, she spoke a carefully chosen sentence about shared listening. If you know someone who does not speak English well or cannot hear clearly, consider being their neighbor. Sit with them. Repeat important information in the language they know, or write it down clearly. Share your radio. The comfort tone at the end of her sentence triggered micro-adjustments in home communication systems that lifted the clarity of her words slightly. A small technological gift that passed without fanfare, but remained in rooms where people gathered around battery-powered radios, sharing the calm competence of voices that had chosen to remain at their posts. Through her monitoring equipment, Sarah observed the elegant way different communication networks supported each other during crisis. Amateur radio operators provided local coordination that complemented professional emergency broadcasts. Whitecap environmental monitoring stations continued scientific observations, while sharing atmospheric data that helped emergency coordinators understand changing conditions. The pattern revealed not crisis improvisation, but systematic activation of protocols designed to integrate multiple information sources during extraordinary circumstances. As the morning continued its progression toward noon, Sarah documented the systematic way emergency communication systems were fulfilling their designed purpose. Her logbook recorded not just technical observations, but evidence of how thoughtful preparation and compassionate engineering could serve human dignity even during history's most challenging circumstances. Each entry would become historical record of extraordinary coordination, preserving voices that had maintained their posts, providing guidance and reassurance when the electromagnetic spectrum filled with signals no one had hoped to hear. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the moment when gentle coordination would face its ultimate test, as systems designed with remarkable foresight would demonstrate their worth in serving human welfare during the transition that would transform the world forever, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, human beings deserve to be treated with kindness, competence, and the understanding that technology at its finest serves not efficiency alone, but the deeper requirements of human dignity and community care. The systematic coordination that Sarah and her colleagues had maintained throughout the morning faced its ultimate test as the scope of the crisis became clear through the subtle changes in their equipment and the careful language that passed between stations on secure channels. By late morning, communication systems began experiencing the first unmistakable effects they had been designed to survive. Electromagnetic interference that arrived not as harsh static, but as a gentle thickening of the noise floor. Power fluctuations that caused analog meters to breathe differently, and increased demand for emergency coordination that revealed the elegant redundancy built into decades of thoughtful preparation. At 11:47, Sarah's primary power indicators flickered as the regional electrical grid experienced stress from multiple simultaneous demands. Her response demonstrated the calm competence of someone whose training had prepared her for exactly these circumstances. The overhead lights dimmed fractionally, not a failure, but the kind of subtle change that tells trained hands what needs to be done without requiring words or alarms. She was already moving. The generator key turned with practiced precision, the transfer switch eased into position, and the briefest pause occurred as circuits decided who would carry the load. Then the diesel engine settled into steady operation, with a low, reassuring hum that became part of the building's new breathing. Battery banks bridged the heartbeat between power sources with professional grace, ensuring that the on-air light never blinked, that her voice never wavered, that listeners experienced no interruption in the steady guidance they had come to rely upon. WKND-7 remains operational on backup power, Sarah reported on the secure coordination channel, her tone unchanged, diction measured and professional. Hardened transmitter engaged, reducing output 5% to maintain thermal margin. No interruption to emergency alert system programming. We continue normal broadcast service. Other voices answered across the network with the same economy of language that characterized emergency professionals implementing procedures they had practiced for years. WMAR-3 acknowledged a similar transition to backup systems. WBOS-12 confirmed activation of emergency antenna arrays designed for challenging propagation conditions. Further south, a coastal relay reported switching to a shorter antenna run to avoid a vulnerable mast section, each station adjusted with practiced restraint, small steps that accumulated into reliable pathways for essential information to continue traveling across vast distances. The electromagnetic interference created patterns that Sarah recognized from training exercises, not random atmospheric noise, but structured interference suggesting high-energy events at considerable distances. Her equipment responded with automatic adjustments, frequency synthesizers shifting slightly to maintain clear channels, while noise reduction circuits activated to preserve message clarity. The hardened transmission systems engaged with quiet competence, their robust design maintaining signal strength despite atmospheric conditions that would have challenged conventional equipment. Through it all, the IRIS system proved its exceptional worth, continuing to broadcast emergency information and coordinate automated responses even when human operators became unavailable in some regions. David Park's careful calibration revealed itself in the synthetic voice that emerged from speakers across the Commonwealth with patient persistence, its gentle guidance continuing without interruption, despite electromagnetic conditions that tested every aspect of the communication infrastructure. This is your emergency information system, with important guidance for your continued safety and comfort, Iris announced, each word carrying the warmth that distinguished it from conventional automated announcements. Sealed containers continue to protect water from contamination. Interior rooms provide better protection than those with exterior windows. Battery-powered radios help you maintain connection to important information. If you are with others, share information calmly and check that everyone understands important guidance. Remember that mutual care strengthens communities during challenging times. The three-note comfort tone accompanied these broadcasts with increased frequency now, its gentle musical signature triggering automatic assistance from household robots and public systems that continued their patient service despite changing circumstances. Mr. Handy units across the region implemented enhanced caretaker protocols, their cheerful voices offering assistance with monitoring broadcasts, gathering supplies, and maintaining comfortable interior conditions, while their programming adapted to provide increased consideration for human welfare. Vault-Tec networks activated their full emergency protocols with systematic precision that revealed the comprehensive scope of pre-war emergency planning. Underground facilities across the Commonwealth reported normal operation of life support systems, communication networks, and automated guidance systems designed to provide comprehensive support for extended periods. Their coordination with surface emergency broadcasts created seamless integration between different layers of emergency infrastructure, each supporting the others while maintaining their individual missions. The Whitecap monitoring network continued its patient vigil along the coastlines, providing atmospheric and radiation readings with scientific precision that made their automated voices trusted sources of objective information when accurate data became crucial for emergency coordination. Despite electromagnetic interference and power fluctuations, the coastal monitoring stations maintained their observations, their electronic voices broadcasting environmental data with the steady reliability that characterized systems designed for continuous operation under challenging conditions. Through multiple operators across the country, an elegant pattern of network fragmentation became apparent. Not catastrophic failure, but graceful degradation that maintained essential services, even when some infrastructure experienced extraordinary stress. Communication networks adapted by rerouting through backup pathways. Isolated stations continued broadcasting for as long as their equipment allowed, and automated systems provided continuous coordination support, with the reliability that distinguished thoughtful engineering from mere technical achievement. Sarah's monitoring displays showed successful coordination, with emergency relay stations positioned throughout the region, backup facilities designed to maintain communication even when primary installations became unavailable. At 12:30, she implemented final layers of emergency protocols, activating hardened transmission systems specifically designed for challenging propagation environments, while maintaining the same measured voice that had guided listeners throughout the morning. This is WKND-7 implementing enhanced emergency broadcast protocols, she announced with steady professionalism. We are maintaining communication capability through backup systems designed for extended operation under challenging conditions. Continue monitoring this frequency for updated information and coordination guidance. Our commitment to serving community communication needs remains absolute. Her logbook filled with entries that captured both technical observations and evidence of systematic preparation proving its worth. 12:10 generator load nominal. 12:15 hardened transmitter engaged. 12:23 iris coordination protocols fully active. 12:47 network relay degraded, successfully rerouted. 13:05 civilian infrastructure responses consistent with design parameters. Each line represented not crisis improvisation, but the graceful activation of systems designed with remarkable foresight to serve human welfare during extraordinary circumstances. The communication infrastructure demonstrated its worth through elegant response to conditions that tested every layer of redundancy and backup planning. Emergency power systems maintained steady operation, hardened equipment continued clear signal delivery, and automated systems provided continuous guidance with the patient persistence that had been programmed into them years earlier by people who understood that technology at its finest serves not efficiency alone, but the deeper requirements of human dignity and community care. As afternoon approached, the pattern became clear. Decades of preparation and redundant design allowed essential communication to continue, even when conventional infrastructure experienced unprecedented stress. The network fragmented but did not fail. Isolated stations maintained their posts, and the gentle coordination that had begun with subtle three-note intervals continued guiding communities through history's most challenging transition, with the understanding that even in the darkest circumstances, human beings deserve to be treated with kindness, competence, and the reassurance that their voices would continue carrying comfort across the static of time. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, preserving these voices as evidence of how thoughtful people had worked for years to ensure that when the world changed forever, the response would be characterized not by chaos but by grace, not by abandonment but by dedication, and not by harsh commands, but by the gentle persistence of systems designed to serve human welfare with dignity and care until the very end. The graceful degradation that Sarah had observed throughout the afternoon, communication networks fragmenting but not failing, systems rerouting through backup pathways with elegant efficiency, automated responses maintaining their gentle coordination despite electromagnetic interference, revealed itself to be something far more profound than crisis management when she discovered the manila folder marked Lullaby Protocol Implementation Guidelines in the secured section of her emergency documentation. The folder had rested there for years, one of those references that appeared in training materials, but had never required activation until extraordinary circumstances warranted its use. As backup power systems maintained their steady hum, and the three-note comfort tone continued its patient work threading through civilian infrastructure. Sarah opened the documentation with the careful attention of someone discovering that apparent improvisation had actually been the result of careful planning by people who understood that even in the worst moments, human beings deserved to be treated with kindness. The revelation emerged gently through technical specifications that reframed everything she had observed, not as emergency measures created in crisis, but as elements of a carefully designed protocol built into pre-war infrastructure years earlier. Engineers, psychologists, and emergency management specialists had collaborated to create systems that would prioritize human comfort over raw information delivery during catastrophic events, recognizing that effective emergency response required not just accurate information, but the preservation of human dignity and community coordination. The Lullaby Protocol represents a fundamental shift in emergency communication philosophy. The opening documentation explained in the measured language of technical writing, created by people who understood they were addressing circumstances no one hoped would occur. Rather than maximizing information throughput during crisis events, the protocol prioritizes emotional equilibrium and community coordination, recognizing that human beings make better decisions when treated with consideration rather than subjected to harsh urgency. The three-note comfort tone that had appeared throughout the day was revealed as a universal acoustic signature, carefully engineered to trigger automatic responses across all connected civilian infrastructure. When broadcast, the gentle musical phrase would cause household Mr. handy units to switch to whisper operation and enhanced caretaker protocols, their programming shifting to provide increased assistance while maintaining their characteristically cheerful but now subdued demeanor. Public address systems would automatically reduce volume by 20 to 40%, depending on ambient noise, extend pauses between announcements, and modify their vocal characteristics to support calm reflection, rather than adding to ambient stress. Even traffic infrastructure had been programmed to respond to the Lullaby Protocol. Pedestrian signals would extend crossing times by modest increments, providing extra moments for safety without creating obvious disruption. Municipal water systems would increase residential pressure slightly within safe limits to ensure adequate supply. For emergency preparations, climate control systems in public buildings would adjust temperature and air circulation to support human comfort during extended occupancy, while power management would favor steady delivery over efficiency to reduce perceptible flicker that might add to psychological stress. The documentation revealed IRIS as the centerpiece of this compassionate design philosophy. Its synthetic voice carefully modulated not just for clarity, but for emotional comfort, through years of collaboration between linguists, psychologists, and audio engineers. Every pause had been calibrated to match an average resting breath. Every phrase had been tested for its ability to provide practical guidance while maintaining the emotional equilibrium that would allow thoughtful rather than reactive responses. Syllabic pacing was locked at 72 to 80 words per minute. Consonant warmth increased and sibilance softened by precise percentages to create the prosody that allowed technology to serve human dignity during extraordinary circumstances. Further specifications revealed that the Whitecap Environmental Monitoring Network and Vault-Tec coordination systems had all been designed to recognize and respond to lullaby protocol activation, creating comprehensive coordination that transcended individual organizational boundaries. When the comfort tone appeared in broadcasts, Whitecap stations would automatically prioritize atmospheric and radiation data sharing with civilian emergency coordinators. Vault-Tec facilities would activate enhanced life support monitoring and prepare to provide extended guidance for residents who might need to remain in protected environments for extended periods. The revelation reframed Sarah's entire day of observations with profound clarity. What had initially appeared to be remarkably graceful crisis management was actually the activation of systems designed specifically to provide comfort and coordination when people needed it most. The apparent improvisation she had witnessed, the patient voices, the coordinated responses, the gentle persistence of automated systems, was actually the implementation of protocols that had been carefully planned, extensively tested, and built into infrastructure, with the understanding that extraordinary circumstances required extraordinary consideration for human welfare. Implementation of the lullaby protocol should be understood not as emergency response, but as the activation of civilian infrastructure's highest purpose. The documentation continued with the gentle authority of people who had dedicated their careers to serving human needs. The protocol represents our commitment to ensuring that when circumstances test the limits of human endurance, technology responds not with harsh efficiency, but with the kind of care that allows communities to maintain dignity and mutual support. A handwritten notation in the margin, preserved in careful block letters, captured the essential philosophy. This is not meant to numb. It is meant to steady. Below it, another note in different handwriting added, "We will not shout at the frightened. We will leave space for breath." Through her afternoon monitoring, Sarah recognized how this philosophy had proven its worth across multiple networks simultaneously. Amateur radio operators had provided local coordination that complemented professional emergency broadcasts, their voices carrying the same measured competence that characterized the lullaby protocol's approach to human communication. Whitecap stations had continued scientific observations while sharing environmental data that supported emergency coordination. Vault-Tec facilities had maintained communication with surface operations while preparing to serve as community resources if circumstances required extended shelter. The pattern revealed systematic activation of protocols designed to integrate multiple information sources during extraordinary circumstances, creating comprehensive situational awareness that served not panic or alarm, but the deeper requirements of community coordination and mutual care. Each system had contributed its specialized capabilities while responding to the Lullaby Protocol's gentle guidance that prioritized human comfort over operational efficiency. As afternoon light continued its patient transition toward evening, Sarah made comprehensive log entries that captured both her technical observations and her growing understanding of the remarkable foresight that had shaped the day's events. 1545. Lullaby Protocol documentation reviewed and understood, she wrote with methodical precision. Day's observations now recognized as systematic activation of infrastructure designed to prioritize human dignity during catastrophic events. Iris, Whitecap, Voltec, and amateur networks demonstrating coordinated response based on years of preparation rather than crisis improvisation. Protocol proving effective in maintaining community coordination and individual welfare, despite extraordinary circumstances. The comfort tone continued its gentle work throughout the afternoon, threading through civilian infrastructure, like a musical promise that technology at its finest could serve not efficiency alone, but the deeper requirements of human dignity. Household robots maintained their whispered assistance. Public address systems spoke with measured gentleness, and automated systems across the Commonwealth continued their patient work of providing guidance and coordination, with the understanding that even in the darkest moments, human beings deserved to be treated with kindness rather than harsh commands or alarming urgency. Outside, the afternoon held communities, where the Lullaby Protocol had transformed what could have been chaos into something approaching grace, not through harsh efficiency or overwhelming information delivery, but through the gentle persistence of systems designed by people who understood that when circumstances test the limits of human endurance, the response should strengthen rather than undermine the bonds of community care and mutual support. The apparent chaos of October 23rd was revealed as the graceful unfolding of a profound act of care, a testament to the quiet competence of people who had worked for years to ensure that when the world changed forever, the final messages would be ones of comfort, guidance, and unwavering dedication to human welfare. The tape continued its patient revolution in the distant archive chamber, carrying these preserved voices toward the aftermath, where the Lullaby Protocol would demonstrate its ultimate purpose, not just surviving catastrophic events, but helping human communities maintain dignity and connection, even as the electromagnetic spectrum filled with signals that marked the end of one world and the beginning of another, proving that thoughtful preparation and compassionate design could serve human welfare until the very end and beyond. The understanding that everything she had witnessed was part of a carefully designed act of care stayed with Sarah as the afternoon deepened into something unprecedented, and the electromagnetic spectrum transformed around her station like a landscape shifting beneath gentle hands. The change announced itself not through catastrophic silence, but as a quieting that felt both profound and purposeful. Familiar voices falling away, like lights dimmed at evening's approach, while other signals emerged with the patient persistence of systems designed never to abandon their posts. At 1447, Sarah's hardened equipment registered the first unmistakable effects of the nuclear exchange through subtle shifts in the noise floor. Brief interruptions in distant signals, and the characteristic flutter of ionospheric disturbance that suggested high-energy events at considerable distances. Her training recognized these signatures immediately, but her equipment responded with the quiet competence of technology designed for exactly these circumstances. Frequency synthesizers shifted automatically, to maintain clear channels, backup circuits engaged without fanfare, and the steady rhythm of her emergency generator continued its patient work of keeping essential systems operational. The radio spectrum became something entirely different, quieter in ways that spoke of absent voices, yet also filled with new kinds of signals as automated systems continued their programmed functions and isolated operators maintained their vigilant service. WKND-7 remained on emergency power, its diesel generator breathing with mechanical steadiness, while battery banks provided seamless conditioning that kept sensitive electronics operating within their designed parameters. The facility held its filtered quiet. The gentle presence of systems that understood their purpose was preservation of both equipment and human connection. Sarah's voice remained unchanged as she implemented protocols that transformed her station from routine emergency broadcasting to long-term coordination support, understanding that her role had evolved into something both simpler and more profound, maintaining the invisible threads that connected whatever communities remained within reach of her transmitter. This is WKND-7 Continuing Emergency Broadcast Service, she announced with the same measured professionalism that had characterized her work throughout the day. We are operating on backup power systems designed for extended operation. Local emergency coordination remains active, and we continue monitoring all frequencies for survivor communication. Our commitment to serving community needs remains absolute. The Iris system proved its exceptional worth in these transformed circumstances, continuing to broadcast emergency information and comfort protocols, even when human oversight became impossible across vast regions. David Park's careful engineering revealed its true purpose as the synthetic voice emerged from speakers throughout the Commonwealth, with unwavering reliability, its gentle guidance adapting to address changed conditions while maintaining the emotional equilibrium that allowed thoughtful rather than reactive responses. This is your emergency information system, with guidance for your continued safety and comfort, Iris announced, each word carrying the warmth that distinguished it from conventional automated announcements. Fresh water can be found in sealed containers, water heaters, and toilet tanks if supply lines have been disrupted. Interior rooms continue to provide better protection. If you have battery-powered radios, continue monitoring emergency frequencies. Check on neighbors when you can, and remember that communities grow stronger through mutual care, especially during challenging times. The three-note comfort tone continued its gentle work, threading through surviving civilian infrastructure like a musical promise that had outlasted the transformation of the world around it. Household Mr. Handy units that had weathered the electromagnetic effects maintained their caretaker protocols, their programming responding to the comfort signal by shifting into enhanced assistance modes, their movements quieter, their voices softer, their focus entirely devoted to human welfare under changed circumstances. I notice we're adapting to new conditions today. A typical unit might announce with gentle enthusiasm, calibrated to current circumstances. I'm happy to help with locating supplies, monitoring broadcasts, and maintaining comfortable conditions. Please rest when you can. Listening and staying informed are important work too. The Whitecap Environmental Monitoring Network continued its patient vigil along the coastlines, broadcasting radiation readings and weather data that helped survivors understand their transformed environment. Despite electromagnetic interference and infrastructure stress, the coastal monitoring stations maintained their scientific observations with methodical precision, their electronic voices providing objective environmental data with the steady reliability that made them trusted sources when accurate information became crucial for survival decisions. Whitecap Station 17, reporting current conditions. The familiar synthetic voice emerged with scientific calm. Background radiation elevated, but within manageable parameters for limited exposure. Wind patterns suggest dispersion toward the northeast. Precipitation possible within 6 hours may affect surface conditions. Sealed shelter recommended during weather events. Next scheduled report in 4 hours. Vault-Tec Systems activated their long-term protocols with the systematic precision that revealed comprehensive pre-war planning for extended emergency circumstances. Underground facilities across the Commonwealth reported successful transition to independent operation. Their life support systems, communication networks, and automated guidance systems designed to provide comprehensive support for extended periods while maintaining coordination with surface operations when possible. Through monitoring surviving frequencies, Sarah began understanding both the scope of what had happened and the profound truth that she was not alone. Other voices continued to broadcast across the transformed spectrum, some automated systems maintaining their programmed functions, others human operators like herself, who had remained at their posts to provide coordination and comfort for whatever communities remained within reach of their transmitters. This is WBOS-12 Continuing Emergency Coordination Service. A familiar voice emerged from her speakers, carrying the steady competence of a colleague who had worked the same networks for years. Operating on backup power, maintaining communication with local emergency services. We are here, we are operational, and we continue to serve. Sarah's response came with quiet satisfaction, her voice joining a chorus of professionals who had chosen to maintain their posts when the world changed forever. WBOS-12. This is Sarah at WKND-7, confirming continued operation and coordination capability. Are you receiving Whitecap environmental data? Similar acknowledgements appeared across surviving frequencies as operators confirmed their continued function, creating a network that was smaller than before, but maintained the essential purpose of connecting communities through the invisible infrastructure of human communication. Each voice represented not just technical capability, but human dedication, people who understood that their work served something larger than individual survival. Her afternoon evolved into coordination for local rescue efforts, guiding small groups of responders to areas where initial reports suggested survivors might need assistance. Through secure channels that remained stubbornly operational, she relayed information about emergency, supply locations, areas of lower radiation readings, gleaned from persistent monitoring systems, and coordination between isolated emergency services, working to provide whatever help circumstances allowed. Amateur radio operators maintained their community networks with the same quiet competence they had brought to routine coordination. Jim Morrison's familiar call sign emerged from the spectrum like the voice of a trusted neighbor. K4JIM, operating on battery backup, rooftop antenna secure, coordinating local assistance for anyone who can safely travel short distances. The pattern that emerged revealed not catastrophic failure, but graceful adaptation, systems proving their worth through continued function under circumstances that tested every aspect of their design. Emergency power maintained steady operation, automated systems provided continuous guidance, and human operators maintained the connections that radio had always provided between communities separated by distance, but united through shared experience and mutual care. As afternoon continued its transition toward evening in a transformed world, Sarah documented the systematic way communication systems were fulfilling their designed purpose. Her logbook recorded not just technical observations, but evidence of remarkable foresight. 1530, electromagnetic effects registered, hardened systems maintaining normal operation. 1545, Iris, continuing guidance broadcasts, comfort protocols fully active. 1600, Whitecap environmental data indicates elevated but survivable conditions. 1615, multiple network stations confirming continued operation. 1630, amateur coordination nets maintaining local assistance networks. The radio spectrum held evidence of compassionate design, proving its worth when circumstances tested the limits of human endurance. The Lullaby Protocol continued its work. Automated systems provided guidance with patient persistence. Isolated operators maintained coordination networks with steady competence, and the three-note comfort tone triggered mechanical assistance that created moments of kindness in a landscape forever changed. Between official broadcasts, Sarah found herself becoming a point where information converged. A local clinic needing generator repair, a neighborhood whose public address system still functioned, offering hourly updates for those without radios, amateur operators conducting check-ins by candlelight, each small coordination helping maintain the invisible networks that connected people to each other and to hope. WKND-7 acknowledges and will coordinate. She responded to each request with gentle authority, understanding that her voice had become part of something larger than emergency broadcasting, a continuing promise that human communication would endure, that communities would find ways to care for each other, and that even when the world changed forever, the essential work of connection would persist. The voices preserved on magnetic tape in the distant archive chamber carried forward this essential truth, that even when everything changed, human communication endured through the dedication of people who understood their work, served the preservation of community, the maintenance of dignity, and the gentle persistence of systems designed to ensure that even in the darkest circumstances, human beings would not face the future alone or without the comfort of voices that had chosen to remain, to guide, and to serve until the very end and beyond. As evening approached this transformed world, the electromagnetic spectrum held not silence, but a different kind of music. Quieter perhaps, but filled with the patient voices of those who had stayed, the gentle guidance of machines programmed for care, and the three-note comfort tone that continued threading through whatever infrastructure survived. A musical reminder that thoughtful people had worked for years to ensure that when the world changed forever, the response would be characterized not by chaos, but by grace, not by abandonment, but by dedication, and not by harsh commands, but by the enduring value of human communication, carried forward by voices that understood their purpose was larger than survival alone. The voices that had maintained their posts throughout that transformed afternoon gradually faded from the speakers, as our guide in the archive chamber carefully wound the final reel, watching the magnetic tape complete its patient journey across the playback heads one last time. Evening had returned to this quiet sanctuary beneath the Commonwealth, with the same unhurried grace it had brought when we first entered. Softening edges, warming the amber glow of vacuum tubes, and settling over equipment that hummed with the satisfied quiet of systems that had fulfilled their purpose. The last magnetic patterns whispered their preserved secrets through the restored heads, carrying forward Sarah's final coordination summary, the gentle persistence of Iris guidance, and the patient scientific reports from Whitecap stations that had continued their vigilant service even as the world transformed around them. Then came silence. Not empty space, but the particular quality of electromagnetic rest that follows completed communication, where dedicated voices had chosen to remain ready for anyone who might call across the static of time. Our guide moved through the evening's shutdown ritual with the practiced grace of someone who understood that even machines deserve gentle handling after long service. The tape lift engaged with its characteristic whisper. The supply reel slowed its revolution, and careful hands unthreaded the magnetic ribbon with the same methodical attention that had characterized every aspect of the evening's work. Each motion reflected the understanding that preservation was not passive storage, but active care, ensuring these voices would remain intact for future listeners who might need to understand how people had faced extraordinary circumstances with competence, grace, and unwavering dedication to community welfare. The evening's documentation. The logbook lay open to pages filled with careful observations, each entry documenting not just technical specifications, but evidence of remarkable coordination and care. With quiet satisfaction, the guide completed the final entry in methodical block letters. October 23rd, 2077, Emergency Network Archive reviewed in its entirety. Recordings confirm systematic activation of lullaby protocol across multiple communication networks. Evidence reveals coordinated infrastructure response designed to prioritize human comfort and dignity during catastrophic events. The signal endures. These words captured the essential revelation that had emerged through patient listening. The apparent chaos of October 23rd had actually been the graceful unfolding of systems designed by people who understood that when circumstances tested the limits of human endurance, technology should respond not with harsh efficiency, but with the kind of care that allowed communities to maintain dignity and connection even as everything changed around them. The symphony of care revealed. The recordings had revealed far more than the events of that impossible day. They had uncovered a deeper story of how human beings and thoughtful machines had worked together to carry comfort through history's most difficult transition. The Iris system, with its carefully modulated voice and patient guidance, had served as the centerpiece of compassionate engineering, designed to maintain calm through extraordinary circumstances. The Whitecap Environmental Monitoring Network had continued its scientific observations with unwavering reliability, providing objective data when accurate information became crucial for survival decisions. Vault-Tec coordination systems had activated their long-term protocols with systematic precision, while amateur radio operators had maintained their community networks with the quiet competence that characterized people who understood their work, served something larger than individual survival. Each voice had contributed its specialized knowledge, while responding to coordination signals that integrated multiple information sources into comprehensive support for human welfare. The pattern revealed not emergency improvisation, but the activation of infrastructure's highest purpose, serving not efficiency alone, but the deeper requirements of community coordination and mutual care. The final comfort tone. As the equipment settled into standby mode, the three-note comfort tone played one final time through the restored speakers, its gentle musical phrase now fully understood as a testament to pre-war engineering that had prioritized human dignity above operational efficiency. The descending notes carried their designed warmth through the chamber, triggering subtle responses even in the archive's own restored systems, indicator lights dimming slightly, cooling fans, reducing their whisper to library quietness, analog meters breathing more slowly behind protective glass. This was the lullaby protocol revealed in its complete purpose. Not merely a coordination signal, but a musical promise embedded in civilian infrastructure, designed to transform potential chaos into grace through the gentle persistence of systems programmed to serve human welfare. It was engineering as an act of care. Technology designed not to command, but to comfort, not to alarm, but to steady those who needed guidance through the darkest circumstances. The broader tapestry. The narrative widened gently beyond the archive chamber to encompass the broader Commonwealth, where similar collections waited in other vaults and bunkers scattered across the transformed landscape. In Vault 111, environmental logs documented the systematic activation of life support protocols. Deep beneath the capital wasteland, Brotherhood facilities preserved technical manuals for comfort tone generation. Across the continent, NCR archives held amateur radio logs from operators who had maintained their coordination networks until their equipment finally succumbed to electromagnetic effects. Together, these scattered archives formed a comprehensive record of how communication networks had served human dignity during history's most challenging transition, each collection adding pieces to the complete picture of systematic preparation, proving its worth when circumstances demanded the finest qualities of both human dedication and thoughtful engineering. The continuing vigil. The archive chamber's equipment powered down for the evening, with the same gentle attention that had characterized the entire session. Vacuum tubes faded from amber to honey-colored warmth. Before settling into darkness, analog meters returned to rest position behind protective glass, and tape mechanisms entered standby with mechanical sighs that spoke of systems designed for patient service across decades. Yet soft indicator lights continued their breathing rhythm: amber, green, amber. Electronic heartbeats promising that tomorrow would bring another opportunity to listen, learn, and remember that even in the darkest moments, human voices had found ways to offer comfort across the static of time. The rooms settled into profound and peaceful quiet, where preserved voices rested until called upon again, their magnetic patterns holding stories of remarkable coordination, gentle guidance, and the understanding that when everything changed, the response should strengthen rather than undermine the bonds of community care and mutual support. Outside the reinforced windows, the Commonwealth held its own quiet, where similar stories waited in facilities scattered across the transformed landscape, each a testament to the conviction that even in history's darkest hour, human beings deserved to be treated with kindness, competence, and the reassurance that they would not face the future alone. Permission to rest. The evening's work was complete, but the larger purpose endured, ensuring that future generations would understand how thoughtful people had worked for years to guarantee that when the world changed forever, the response would be characterized not by abandonment, but by dedication, not by harsh commands, but by the gentle persistence of voices that had chosen to remain, to guide, and to serve. If you have been listening through this long evening of preserved voices, you may let your own breath match the room's slow rhythm and allow your shoulders to ease. The signal endures, carried in magnetic patterns and electronic memory, but also in the simple decision to keep watch with care, to speak gently when others are frightened, and to leave space for breath when the world grows difficult to understand. Rest comes easily here, in this quiet space where human voices and thoughtful machines proved that even at the edge of everything familiar, people could choose to work carefully and speak kindly. The comfort tone has faded, the equipment sleeps with patient indicator lights, and tomorrow will bring another opportunity to remember that technology at its finest serves not efficiency alone, but the deeper requirements of human dignity and the gentle persistence of care that transcends the boundaries of time itself. The voices will wait, intact and patient, ready to meet you when morning returns.